Many conclusions can be drawn from the beatdown that the Kentucky Wildcats suffered at the hands of one Tom Izzo and his Michigan State Spartans. But one thing that can be said for sure is that changes need to be made, and it's starting at the top. What's cooking? Welcome back into another edition of Now We Can Talk Like Fans on ESPN Louisville Plus. My name is Justin Sofro, and if you haven't been here before, we like to talk a little cards, cats, bourbon, and bluegrass. And of course, today our topic has to focus solely on the Kentucky Wildcats and, of course, their head coach as they went into the Champions Classic and got defeated, manhandled, beaten down by a Michigan State Spartans team, which prior to that game had suffered to shoot the three ball, instead draining 11, and Kentucky could basically, they were inept in all facets of the game, especially defensively. But the most important aspect, while we can talk about each player and the demeanor of the player and the situations that led them to finally losing that game in the end, I think it's more important, and I think a lot of people have covered this today, talking about the importance of the one man sitting there at the top, needing to look in the mirror and change a lot about himself. Just for clarity again, I am a Louisville fan, so take that with a grain of salt. I like to think that I am pretty nonpartisan when it comes to breaking down how I feel about these players, how I feel about these teams, and the way that they play. I'm probably harder on the Cardinals than I am anybody. But there's a lot of experiences in the last couple seasons that some red flags are starting to pop off in my head. And I think a lot of the BB and faithful are as well. Let's just look at the one man, and let's just also clarify this. Whether, what you may take from a headline, from a thumbnail, whatever, we are not calling for the job of Mark Pope at this time. I am not claiming that Mark Pope needs to be fired in this beginning, before it's even Thanksgiving of the second year of his tenure at Kentucky. Well, I thought I was pretty impressed with the way that the first season went under Mark Pope. I did not expect him to break through and make it to the Sweet 16, and I know that is not the end goal for Kentucky. Again, I can be rational and say that the Kentucky Wildcats, the job of Kentucky basketball, is the premier job in all of college sports, the college basketball sports. And you can get into football and all that, and we can talk Notre Dame and Bama and whatever. But when it comes to college basketball, the Bluegrass is king in Kentucky. While they struggle as of late, even under Calipari, they remain the kings of college basketball, as much as that pains me to say. Unfortunately, the guy at the helm isn't holding himself up as a king. If there's one thing looking at Kentucky basketball and looking at the past, the guys who had filled those roles, filled those seats, the ones that worked out, John Calipari, Rick Pitino, those guys were kings. They held court when he talked about their teams, when they had to admonish them, when they had to hype them up. They were elite in their mannerisms and in the way that they operated with the media. Now, when Louisville decided to go hire Pat Kelsey, and when Kentucky at the same time frame decided to go hire Mark Pope, a lot of what people liked, let's say that, a lot of what people enjoyed about these guys is that they were more everymen. They were similar to you and I, though Mark Pope has a championship title under his belt. He was more you and I fans of the programs than he was the elites leading this program and letting it, they're not bigger than the job. Unfortunately, when you step into Kentucky, when you step into Louisville, when you step into Duke, North Carolina, whatever, you got to be bigger than the job sometimes. And one of the things we witnessed is a little bit of the dourness of one Mark Pope. I'm going to go ahead and throw it to the video or the GIF of him walking into a giant matchup a week after losing to your rival, getting beat down for part of that game, just clawing your way back into it, but then losing against Louisville, which is something that Kentucky does not do often, and then going in to play Michigan State, one of the other quote-unquote blue bloods of the sport, one of the other champions in the Champions Classic. And of course, this is how he looks walking in. That is not a man who exudes confidence. That is not a man who exudes that's not somebody that I would say, lead me, sir, lead me, captain. Show me the way to victory. This is not a guy who is confident in his role. Additionally, after the events unfolded, you don't need me to rehash them. You can go back and listen to the ESPN 680 Kentucky post-game show by TJ Walker and Zach Cantrell on the Podcast Center, ESPN Louisville, and the ESPN app. Anyway, you can listen to that anytime after the game. And then, of course, we had the comments that were made following that with one Jeff Goodman, not Jeff Gordon. And just take for it what you will in his demeanor.
All right, Mark, this is probably, I think, as down as I've seen you, period, since I've known you. What are you going through right now in terms of the frustration after this loss?
Well, I don't want to take away anything from Michigan State because Tom is one of the great coaches in college basketball, and those guys played tough and together and hard and played well. Mostly just credit those guys, and we are facing a monumental challenge right now, and I'm excited to see if we can figure it out.
You hinted at something like this a week or so ago before the Louisville game or after the Louisville game. Did you sense that this has been kind of brewing throughout the preseason?
No. I'm disappointed with how disconnected we've been. I thought I had a better pulse. I thought I was doing a better job coaching than I'm doing right now. So it's been eye-opening for me a little bit. So no, I'm a little bit surprised.
And by coaching, you're not talking about X's and O's as much as you're talking about getting these guys to play for the Kentucky name. Correct?
No, I think it's everything. I think it's developing a culture. It's the right care. It's the right focus. It's the right schemes. It's the right X's and O's. It's a poor job. The nice thing is I can fix it. Like, we can fix it, but it's a really disappointing result.
All right, thanks, Mark.
My God. If I were a member of the BBN, if I were a fan of this man who is coaching this team, I would have as much confidence as I did as a Louisville fan for the 2 years under Kenny Payne. You're talking about two very different circumstances. Honestly, if it were me, I would have loved to see maybe this kind of personality, this kind of feeling, this kind of response from Kenny Payne during his time coaching the Louisville Cardinals, because it was a travesty. It was the most abysmal affront to the game of college basketball, into coaching, and to the fan base as a whole that I've ever seen. So this kind of sentiment, this kind of personality, this kind of woe is me, sad, whatever, I'm so sorry. I could accept that if Kenny Payne did it, and instead Kenny didn't. And instead, Kenny went Socrates. And we've seen a little bit of Socrates from Mark Pope. I'm sure you'll see more of it when he comes back into his next press conference. But right now, instead, we see Mopey Pope. Oh, sad Mark Pope, who is sad that he's failing at his job. And while I respect that, to a modicum, to a tiny amount, because he at least shows that he cares about the program that he's coaching. He cares that he is sucking at his job. He cares that he is failing you, the fan. He cares that he's failing Mitch Barnhart. He cares that he's failing, maybe not failing, wink, wink. I think his protege, he's a protege of Rick Pitino. I think Rick Pitino may be enjoying this. I don't know. I think while he supports him, I think he enjoys seeing other people fail at his place, right? Anyway, while that works in certain scenarios, this does not work when you were the head coach of Kentucky basketball. You need to be able to right this ship. You need to be able to show that you have the confidence to lead. And right now he shows that he has zero confidence. And if you look at his history and you look at his past, where he's been at a lot of mid-majors, and BYU was a mid-major until they went to that 1 year where they finished fifth place in the Big 12, and then he came here. Not a lot of confidence to really go off of, but it remains early in this season and remains plenty of time for Mark Pope to turn things around for Kentucky. And I think he's got the pieces and the players that he can do it. But the biggest problem is the attitude from the coach, the attitude from the players. We saw how Otagowe responded in the body language. You saw the piss poor body language from everybody all around, from the coaches, from the coach, from the players, everybody who was in attendance at that game. I don't know how Kentucky fans aren't more infuriated by this. And I think they pretty much are. But if you want to see change in your players, you got to see change in yourself. And you just take a look in the mirror. Whoever is working on him, his assistant coaches, Mark Fox, I guess, if you want to be useful for one time in your life, right now it would be a good time to take a mirror and put it right up to Mark Pope's face and show him what he is exuding. What he shows, we use the term kids, but what these kids are making $22 million. So do we want to talk about that? $22 million for this team. Kentucky, I maybe would have kept it a little quiet if you're talking about $22 million. If Louisville's beating your ass and only spending $8 million, and who knows what Michigan State spent. But at the same time, one thing that I would do is definitely go about it a little bit differently. It's time for Mark Pope to have a funeral for this version of himself. For the mopey, sad, whiny, depressed, unable to back up anything that he does, this version of Mark Pope has to die. Because if not, Kentucky basketball has no future with Mark Pope. And that's a situation where I know that Kentucky fans will hold him accountable. Whether you may be a beloved son from a long time ago, and it may not be as bad as it was for Louisville with Kenny Payne, Kentucky basketball and Kentucky fans aren't dumb enough to let it go on for multiple seasons like it has at Louisville and other places. So let me know in the comment section down below, do you think it's time that Mark Pope gets a little bit of a spine and maybe a little bit more fire and anger and back into this program and get these guys whipped into shape? Let me know in your comment section down below. If you haven't already, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell icon, and stay notified for all of our latest videos. We'll see you next time. Cards, Cats, Bourbon, and Bluegrass. See ya.